You don't ask for help, not because you don't need it, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that needing was dangerous. You learned to carry things alone, quietly, efficiently. You learned how to smile while struggling, how to say, I am fine, and mean, I'll survive this by myself. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from this. Not the kind that sleep fixes, but the kind that lives in your chest. The weight of always being the one who figures it out. You don't collapse. You don't reach out. You endure. And on the outside, this looks like strength, independence, maturity. People admire you for it. They say things like, you're so capable, or you don't need anyone. But here's the paradox, the quiet truth beneath it all. The self-reliance that once kept you safe is now the very thing keeping you alone. What protected you in the past is now slowly starving you of support, intimacy, and rest. You learned early that help doesn't always come. Or worse, that help comes with conditions, with guilt, with disappointment, with emotional debt. So you adapted. You stopped asking. You stopped expecting. You stopped hoping. And that decision, made in survival, shaped your nervous system, your relationships, and your identity far more deeply than you realize. This isn't about pride. It's not about ego. It's about a nervous system that learned, if I don't depend on anyone, I can't be abandoned. Psychologically, people who never ask for help are rarely strong by nature. They are conditioned. Conditioned by environments where support was inconsistent, unsafe, or emotionally expensive. One core concept here is avoidant attachment. Avoidant attachment develops when caregivers are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or unpredictable. The child learns a powerful rule. My needs are inconvenient. I am safest when I rely on myself. So the nervous system adapts. It shuts down the signal that says reach out and amplifies the signal that says handle it alone. Another critical concept is hyperindependence, a trauma response, not a personality trait. Hyperindependence is the belief that dependence equals danger. It's not confidence, it's vigilance. People with this pattern often experienced emotional neglect, parentification, having to grow up too early, or abandonment, physical or emotional. Their brain learned to associate vulnerability with risk. Neuroscientifically, this reshapes the default mode network, the brain system responsible for self-referential thinking. Instead of, I can rely on others, the internal narrative becomes, I must manage everything alone to stay safe. And then there's emotional neglect schema. This schema forms when a child's emotional needs aren't mirrored or responded to. The child doesn't learn how to receive, only how to cope. So as adults, these individuals don't just avoid asking for help. They feel physically uncomfortable receiving it. Their nervous system reads support as unfamiliar. And unfamiliar, to a traumatized brain, feels unsafe. Carl Jung once wrote, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. But there's another burden, quieter, heavier, the burden of never being allowed to need. You gave up something essential in order to survive. You traded softness for control, dependency for competence, longing for endurance. And the grief of that trade is rarely acknowledged. This is invisible grief, grieving a version of yourself who could have leaned, rested, asked, received. The core fear underneath this pattern is not weakness. It is abandonment. Not dramatic abandonment, but the subtle kind. Being ignored when you were overwhelmed. Being shamed for needing reassurance. Being praised only when you were easy or low maintenance. So you learn to disappear emotionally, to need less, to want less, to expect less. But this fear doesn't stay in the past. It seeps into daily life. You hesitate before sending that message. You downplay your exhaustion. You solve problems quietly while wishing, just a little, that someone would notice. And yet, when they offer help, something inside you tightens. Because needing still feels like a liability. Seneca once said, he who is brave is free. But what if what we call bravery is sometimes just prolonged survival? People who never ask for help don't stop needing help. They just learn how to hide the need from themselves. You might recognize this in adulthood as, in relationships, you struggle to express needs without guilt. You become the supporter, the listener, the fixer. You attract partners who lean while you stand. In career, you overperform quietly. You take on more than necessary. You hesitate to delegate, not because you don't trust others' competence, but because asking feels unsafe. In self-worth, Your value becomes tied to capability. If you're not useful, you feel exposed. In boundaries, you say yes when you're exhausted. You offer help reflexively while denying your own limits. In emotional regulation, you intellectualize feelings instead of feeling them. You process pain privately, efficiently, alone. In identity, you don't know who you are when you're not handling things. But here's the reframe that changes everything. These are not flaws. They are adaptations. They kept you alive. They kept you functional. And healing doesn't start with self-criticism. It starts with witnessing, not forcing yourself to ask for help overnight, but noticing what happens in your body when you consider it. The tightness, the hesitation, the fear. That awareness is the beginning of unlearning. Healing this pattern is not about becoming dependent. It's about becoming relationally safe. One powerful tool is inner child reparenting, learning to respond to your own needs with consistency and compassion. Another is shadow work, meeting the part of you that equates need with danger and asking where it learned that rule. Nervous system regulation is essential. Slow breathing, somatic grounding, letting support arrive in small, tolerable doses. Healing happens when you choose softness over survival, not all at once, but gradually. When you let someone hold something small, when you admit you're tired without explaining it away, when you allow yourself to receive without earning it. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage." Your self-reliance was never the enemy. It was a protector, but you don't need it to work so hard anymore. You are allowed to be supported, not because you've proven your worth, but because you exist. The goal is not to be fixed. The goal is to become whole. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who carries everything alone. And if you want more deep psychological explorations like this, subscribe, not for motivation, but for understanding. You don't have to carry it all by yourself anymore.